All right, so I'm going to tell you a little teeny bit about Steve Cormier, and he'll tell you more about himself. He worked on ranches and farms in the Flint Hills of Kansas, and wait a minute, I have to move this. And around Santa Rosa and Fort Sumner, New Mexico, from 1979 to 1988. He holds a PhD in American Studies with a dissertation on New Mexico ranching and spent 22 years teaching history. He has published chapters on ranching in 2 books. He also has played supporting roles in numerous television shows and films, including Breaking Bad, Gunsmoke, and Wyatt Earp. He now tours the US and Canada singing cowboy songs. He has recorded 5 albums and will post information about them on the Albuquerque Folk Festival website and Facebook page. And by the way, his name is pronounced Cormier when he's performing in Canada. Take it away, Steve.
Welcome back, folks. I'm going to talk and sing about 2 types of cowboy songs. One is working cowboy songs, which are traditional in nature, and the other is sort of the Hollywood version that has sprung up from traditional working cowboy music. And I learned a bunch of the traditional songs from the finest cowboy singer I was ever around. His name is Glenn Orland. He had a little place just outside of Mountain View, Arkansas, and I got to know him and learn from him and talk with him. This is one that he knew that I stole from him. I stole a bunch of stuff from him. And one of the things about working cowboy music, traditional working cowboy music, and I use that phrase because I mean something kind of specific, and that is that it's about the work, herding cattle, riding horses, riding bucking horses, broncs, that are our problems. And it also has to do with a raw version of love. It's not nearly as poetic as a lot of other songs about love are. And let me give you, I'll give you an example. This song is from the 1880s. And it's about herding cattle from Texas to New Mexico. And in the song, you'll hear New Mexico referred to the first time as just plain Mexico, because that's what the Texans quite often thought of. New Mexico as just another extension of Mexico. And this is called the Trail to Mexico. I made up my mind in the early days. Leave this country for to stay. No more in Texas to dwell for a while, but to travel west for many a mile. That was in the year of 83, when J.H. Humphrey, he hired me. He said, young man, you are to go and trail my herd into Mexico. Now it was early in all the month of May, when on the trail I started to go. I kissed goodbye to the darling of my heart, said true to me, she'd always be. Last time I held her in my arms, I thought she was 10,000 charms. Her caresses are soft and her kiss is sweet. Said we'll be married next time we meet. Now it was a long and a lonesome go as the herd moved on to New Mexico with music sweet and cowboy song. To New Mexico, oh, the herd moved on. Well, we finally got there in New Mexico. Longed for my love, but I could not go. So I wrote a letter to my sweetheart dear, but not a word from her did I hear. So I went back home to my once loved home. Called for the darling of my own. They said she'd married for a richer life, and therefore, cowboy, find yourself another life. Well, I'll go back west to God's own land, and I haunt my faithful cowboy band, where your friends are few and they're always true. False-hearted love, I'd forget I knew. False-hearted love, I'd forget I knew. Okay, so that is from the 1880s, 1890s, give or take, and it's pretty straightforward in its description of what he's doing, and of course now it's got a lost love in it, and that makes for the best kind of love song under any circumstances, I maintain. Even a pop tune where they get married at the end and they're happily after, that's not a good song. It's got to be tragic, you know. And cowboy songs are tragic in that respect, you know. Now, those of us who sing these old songs are indebted to a song collector whose name was Jack Thorpe. And Thorpe was originally from New York, and he came to New Mexico to find polo ponies for his uncles, who were obviously polo enthusiasts, and apparently that's what he did, but he also fell in love with the open range cowboy life, and this is in the 1880s, 1890s, and Thorpe stayed in New Mexico and in Texas. Eventually, Thorpe got a ranch near Santa Fe, and all the while, he was collecting these songs. There wasn't any music with them. He published the first songbook called Songs of the Cowboys. And it was published in Estancia, New Mexico, back when Estancia had a printing press. And it was about 1909, and it's the very first cowboy songbook. And if you ever see one, you'll notice there's no music with it. He didn't take down the music, he took them down as poetry. And and quite often these would be sung in an a cappella fashion, which is part of working cowboy tradition, singing a cappella. Because if you were working for an outfit or for a ranch, it's not likely you're going to carry a piano around. It doesn't fit on the back of a horse too well. Most likely, and we know this from commentary and from photographs, is a fiddle, a mandolin, banjo, harmonica maybe, a small guitar, not a large adapted guitar like this one. This is called a dreadnought, and it was developed by Martin in the 1920s. Wouldn't be this. It would be a small, what's called a parlor guitar. And of course, if they didn't have any instruments, if they're out on the range, they generally would sing a cappella. In fact, you could get a job, and I have read and heard of people getting a job on a ranch who weren't particularly good cowboys, but they could sing. And if you could sing, there was the night's entertainment and such. So I'm going to sing one for you, a cappella, and this is a song. It's called "The Zebra Dun," and it's about a city slicker, or what they assume is as a city slicker, coming into the camp and wanting to borrow a horse. And of course, he's dressed in a suit, and he's got like brogan shoes on, and speaking in complete sentences and things like that. And these guys are bored, and since they're bored, they decide they're going to play a prank on this city slicker, what they assume is a city slicker. So Shorty, who's the smart aleck of the group, the prankster, and also the remuda wrangler, the horse herd wrangler, gets his lariat out and he ropes the Zebra Dun, which is just the rankest horse in the whole remuda. He has only one virtue, and that is that he'll stand and let you get on him and give you a fair chance before he comes unglued. Now, this is a song that is from the late 19th century, and so it's about a prank. At the same time, it's about dealing with boredom, and it's called "The Zebra Dun." We were camped upon the plains at the head of the Cimarron. When along come a stranger and he stopped to argue some. He looked so very foolish he began to look around. Thought he was a greenhorn just escaped from town. Now we asked if he'd had breakfast and he hadn't had a smear. So he opened up the chuck box and bid him take his share. He took a cup of coffee and some bacon and some beans, and then began to talk about them foreign kings and queens, about the Spanish War and the fighting on the sea, guns as big as steers and ramrods as big as trees, and about Paul Jones, the mean fighting son of a gun, about the orneriest cuss ever pulled a gun. Now such an educated fella, his thoughts just running herds. And he astonished all us cowboys with them jaw-breaking words, and he just kept on talking till he made the boys all sick. We began to look around how to play a trick. Now, he said he'd lost his job upon the Santa Fe, and he was going across the plains just to strike the 7D. He didn't say how come he had some trouble with the boss, that he liked to borrow a nice fat saddle hoss. Now this tickled all the boys to death, and we laughed down in our sleeves. Oh, we'll give you a horse nice and fat as you please. And Shorty grabbed a lariat and roped the Zebra Dun, handed to the stranger, just waiting for the fun. Now old Dun was an outlaw who had grown so very wild, and he could paw the white out of the moon and jump for a mile. But he stood so very silent as though he didn't know, till he was saddled and ready for to go. And when the stranger hit the saddle, old Dun quit the earth and traveled right straight up for all he was worth. pitching and squalling and having wall-eyed fits, hind feet perpendicular, the front ones in the bits. Now you can see the tops of mountains underdone at every jump, but the stranger is growed there like a camel's hump. Stranger sat upon him and twirled his black mustache like a summer boarder just waiting for his hash. Now he thumped him in the shoulders and he spurred him when he whirled, just to show them flunky punchers he's the wolf of the world. And when he had dismounted once more upon the ground, I knowed he was a thoroughbred and not a gent from town. Now the boss was standing around, taken in of the show, and he walked up to the stranger and he said, "You needn't go. You can use a lariat like you rode the zebra done. You're the man I've been looking for since the year '01. Now we could toss a lariat and he didn't do it slow. He'd catch them hind feet 9 out of 10 for any kind of dough. And when the herd stampeded, he was always on the spot. Set him to milling just like the boiling of a pot. And it's one thing, it's a sure thing, I know since I've been born, ever educated fella ain't a plum greenhorn." Zebra done. Now that, like I said, is 130 years old, maybe something like that. And we don't, that's a traditional song. We don't know who wrote it. But there were some cowboy poets back then who put poetry in the cattlemen's magazines of the period, and we have an example of that by a guy by the name of D.J. O'Malley, who was a Montana cowboy and stockman. And we know exactly when he put this in as a poem in 1894 in the Montana Stockman. O'Malley put this poem in. He always said that it was a true story about this guy who said, "I'm going to go home and see Mom when the work's all done this fall." And of course he didn't make it. It would have made kind of a boring song if he'd have made it. It's much more exciting and meaningful and tear-jerking if he doesn't make it. And this is called When the Work's All Done This Fall. Now a group of jolly cowboys were discussing plans at ease. Says one, "I'll tell you something, if you will listen please. I am an old cowpuncher, though here I'm dressed in rags. I used to be a tough one and take on great big jags. Oh, I have got a home, boys, a good one you all know, though I have not seen it since long, long ago. I'm going back to Dixie once more to see them all. I'm going back to see my mother when the work's all done this fall. Now after the roundup's over and after the shipping's done, I'm going right straight home, boys, ere all my money's gone. Mother's heart is breaking, it's breaking for me, that's all. And with God's help I'll see her when the work's all done this fall. Now this very night this cowboy went out to stand his guard. The weather, it was stormy, and raining very hard. The cattle, they got frightened and they rushed in wild stampede. The cowboy tried to head them while riding at full speed. Well, by riding through the darkness so loudly he did shout, trying his best to head them and turn the herd about. His saddle pony stumbled and on him did fall, and he'll not see his mother when the work's all done this fall. Now he was so badly mangled, we thought he was dead. Picked him up so gently, laid him on his bed, and opening wide his blue eyes and looking all around, motioned to his comrade sitting near him on the ground. I want you to send my mother my wages, the wages I have earned, for I'm afraid, boys, my last year I have turned. I'm going to a new land, I hear my master's call, and I'll not see my mother when the work's all done this fall. Pete, you can have my pistol. Jake, you can take my bed, and Butch, you can have my saddle after I am dead. Think upon me kindly as you gaze upon them all, and give my love to mother when the work's all done this fall. Charlie died that morning with no tombstone at his head, nothing but a little board, and this is what it read. Charlie died this morning, he died from a fall, and he'll not see his mother when the work's all done this fall. Forgive my throat clearing, it just was unavoidable. So there's that song, and I've down through the years I've kind of developed a criteria for the perfect working traditional cowboy song. I have yet to find one that fits all of these criteria, but there's like 7 of them, maybe 8 if you stretch it. And the perfect working cowboy song would have these things in it, all of them. They would have cattle, horses, cowboys, unrequited love. If the love is getting requited, it's a pop tune, doesn't count. Mom, dying, sorry, that's got to be part of it. And then some kind of religious reference as well. You get all 7 of those, you've got the perfect song. And I haven't ever found it. If you ever do find a song with us all 7 in there, let me know. Okay, I'm going to do one about a braggart, and this is called Windy Bill. I got this off of Glen Orland. It's kind of self-explanatory. It's got a lot of terminology in here about cowboy gear and stuff like that. Now Windy Bill was a Texas lad, and he could rope, you bet. He swore the steer he could not tie, he had not met with yet. Us boys knew of an old black steer who was kind of an old outlaw. run down in the Malpais in the bottom of the draw. With the samstack, with his grays and bit, and his samstack tree, and his shaps and taps to boot. And his old McGee tight, hard and fast, Bill swore he'd get that brute. And Bill sauntered right around him, and old Blackie began to paw. And up his tail went in the air, he went drifting down the draw. Now that old gray horse flew after him, 'cause he'd been eating corn. And Bill piled his old McGee around old Blackie's horns. That old gray horse, he stood stock still, the cinches broke like straw. And the old McGee and the samstack tree went drifting down the draw. Now Bill led into a flint rock pile, scratched up his hands and face. He allowed he could always rope a steer, this failure was disgrace. He up and paid his debts just like a man, without a bit of chalk, and allowed old Blackie was the boss of everything in the draw. Now the moral to this story is as plain as you can see. Whenever you go to rope a steer, do not tie him to your tree. But you take your deli welters, oh, it's the California law. And you'll never see your samstack tree go drifting down the draw. And that's about the virtue of dallying. The Spanish term is darle a vuelta, it means to take a turn, rather than making a knot with your rope. Because if you make a knot with your rope and the animal that you have roped decides to, I don't know, jump off a cliff, you're going with him, unless you got a knife. But if you dallied, you can just let the rope go, and the animal will go by itself, and you can just watch it tumble down into the ravine there, and you're safe and such. So anyway, before the COVID thing shut down all my touring and everybody else's for that matter, and traveling around, occasionally I'd get people come up at intermission and say, "When are you going to do a cowboy song?" I says, "Well, that's kind of what I've been doing." And they said, no, Gene Autry, Roy Rogers, etc. I said, well, okay, I got one here. And this is the Hollywood view of what cowboying is all about. And this is a song that was written by Johnny Mercer. And it was first sung in a Hollywooded up Western. I can't remember the name of it, but it was first sung by oh gosh, what's his name? That great crooner, Bing Crosby. By Bing Crosby, and Martha Raye took a verse in it too, and they jazzed it all up. This is "I'm an Old Cow Hand." I'm an old cow hand. from the Rio Grande. I learned to ride, oh, I learned to stand. I'm an old cowboy, never saw a cow, never roped a steer, 'cause I don't know how. I ain't fixing to start in now. Oh, yippee-yi-yo-ki-yi, yippee-yi-yo-ki-yi. I'm an old cowhand from the Rio Grande. My legs ain't bowed, my cheeks ain't tan. Nope. I know all the trails in the Lone Star State. I'm one cowboy who's up to date, 'cause I ride them all in my Ford V8. Oh, yippee-yi-yo-ki-yi, oh, yippee-yi-yo-ki-yi. I'm an old cowhand from the Rio Grande, where the West is wild, round the borderland, where the buffalo roam around the zoo, and the Santa Feans, they'll sell you a rug or two, and old Bar Rex is a barbecue. Oh, yippee-yi-yo-ki-yi, yippee-yi-yo-ki-yi. I'm an old cowhand from the Rio Grande. I go to town just to hear the band. I know all the songs that the cowboys know about the big corral where the doggies go. They'll learn them all on the radio. Oh, yippee-yi-yo-ki-yi, oh, yippee-yi-yo-ki-yi, yippee-yippee-yippee. Oh, ki-yi, ki-yi, ki-yi. Thank you for listening and watching, folks. Be safe.